then it is inevitable that the military takes over. So that is what seems to have happened. Uh, I have been asked to, stand in for a couple of people, which I'll happily do. Also for another reason, because I had no intentions of, going into the details and the nitty-gritties of the deal. There are people much more qualified; they can talk about it. I was only going to talk about it in the framework, call it the new great game, the big picture, the conceptual framework, and that may set the stage for more substantial talk on the subject. For example, whenever we talk about relations between nations, sometimes, the terms like geoeconomics, geostrategy, I mean, all these things come to mind. For me, actually, the overarching umbrella has always been geopolitics. That, encompasses economics, political interest, strategy, the way it gets played. I hope I am audible. I'm audible. People can
Yes,
hear
sir.
me.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
You
sir.
are audible. You are audible, sir.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Because some gentleman was here. Yeah, Siddiqui sir was talking, and I could not hear him. Maybe I thought that he was suggesting that the voice was not reaching him. However, in this particular case, for me, now having said that it is about that, there are a couple of fascinating aspects of this particular arrangement, the way it has come about, the environment in which it has come about, the timings of it. If Swinsky was still around, Swinsky who talked about the great chessboard of the international politics, he would have described it as, if not the checkmate, at least a move that makes everyone around think about it. How are they going to counter this particular move? It has been done so often. People make their moves. I can talk about, post 9/11, SCO formation, the Quad, and also one which was initiated by Pakistan, and I'll refer to that near the end of my intervention. If I have to talk about the environment, I do not even have to explain as to what is happening, how global positioning is being done, especially related to these two countries. If we are talking about Iran, then it is, the, the nuclear deal, the civilian nuclear deal that had been done so much in the past, suspended, and now again people trying to think how to revive. And of course, it is about China, how the balancing has to be done by the US led, well, let's say either the Nexus or the alliance, how it must contain now the rise of China. That much we do know that it is happening. I think there is also another factor which is right now very important, how the US would exit Afghanistan. In that environment, and with all the sanctions being imposed right, left, and center, this particular move must have upended many uh, MIAs, uh, many strategies that people are working out. Just to give you one example, if it is an accident or if it is an incident, but just when this particular arrangement comes to mind, then also is that indirect talks somewhere in Geneva or Brussels are also on foot about the revival of the nuclear deal. Both the countries, for understandable reasons, may not come face to face, but there would be enough interaction of their supporters, of their intermediaries, of important actors. If this deal has brought it about, one can say this was the immediate gain. There would be another one. I am not sure how this particular incident or this particular deal will now help Biden make up his mind about exiting from Afghanistan. He did seem to have some right ideas, but as expected, there are people who are dragging their feet. No surprise there. One of his very good ideas was the interim government, and that has been countered. The counter move by Ashraf Ghani and others to talk about early elections. If now Biden realizes the implications of this move and everything else, he might be tempted to take this very bold, very wise move of insisting on the interim government. And that would be one more gain or the benefit, the collateral benefit of this. Let me also talk about something that concerns or that has affected the people of Pakistan a little more. And that is that during these negotiations, some mention was made about a country that makes a U-turn on one phone call. I can understand the sensitivity here. I can understand some people getting upset. But frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is what the French must do. And when they see that there will be one or the other who may be in two minds, who may be fickle minded on certain things, and in our case, the last 2 decades, we have done it 3 times, then this type of warning and advice, this type of a gesture must be made so that we know what the stakes are and become a little more serious about doing our business. There is an irony in the whole thing. And the irony is that both these countries, China and Iran, in the past have also experienced some very steadfast moves by Pakistan. In the 1960s, how we resisted the American pressure and continued to build our relationship with China. And in the 1980s, despite all what was happening next door in Afghanistan, our alliance with the United States, despite all the insistence by the United States that we should now downgrade our relationship with Iran, we stuck to it because we said it's our neighbor. Everything aside, we're not going to do it on your bidding. The result is that for the last about 40, 50 years, we are the ones, Pakistan is the one, who's been representing Iranian interest in Washington. And my last point, and I said I'll talk to you about a certain move that Pakistan did, and that also ironically nowadays is, though bearing fruit, but even then, this shadow of turning around cannot go away because it is a legitimate one. In the first decade of the century, the effort to bring the regions around here, and that was a more solid move than the formation of the SCO, was undertaken by Pakistan because of our stakes in Afghanistan, because of what was happening. Somewhere in the middle of the first decade, the move started to mend fences or remove the irritants with Iran, reaching out to Russia. It was a spectacular move, how we did that. In the meantime, the 4 countries already on board. Turkey's also come around. So we in Pakistan did set the pace. But if there are a couple of things that we have not done properly, and I do concede that it wasn't done the way a country like Pakistan is expected to do, then it's perfectly all right. The French can warn us. The French can also say, ring the alarm bell and say that on such occasions, we can be looking at not only the bigger picture, but also if an arrangement like between China and Iran comes to the fore, I suppose we should immediately immediately snatch the benefits that are going to accrue to us next door, whether it is in the form of CPEC or a bigger arrangement or in Afghanistan. So that is what was what we could do instead of getting a little nervous or upset as to what may or may not happen. Whatever has happened, I'll just sum it up. It's all not only to our good, but something spectacular, something unusual. It's not a step that can be ignored. And if it is, it will be all at our cost. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Durrani Saab, for your wonderful deliberation. And of course, if civilians won't get late, so they would be the army too.
Yeah, that is my warning to them.
Then that is great. That is great. They should be really punctual, and they should be well in time. Well in time. Otherwise, civilian governments and the civilian system
The
cannot
vacuum will
function.
be filled by
Yeah,
someone.
yeah. Of course that is. Of course that is. And may I see? I can't see. If Ambassador Nagmana Hashmi is there. Madam Ambassador Nagmana Hashmi. I'm trying to find out. No, I don't see on the next page. Ambassador Nagmana Hashmi. Yeah, no. Okay, fine. Now I would request Dr. Danji, a senior research fellow, Chengdu Institute of World Affairs, the research fellow, Chahar Institute, Chengdu. Ma'am, please go ahead. Unmute your mic and please, yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Perfect. Today I also prepare a PowerPoint file to deliver my presentation. And please allow me to give a brief introduction first. I'm a scholar living in China, based in Chengdu, the capital city of Sichuan province, where the giant panda is from. Right now, I'm a senior research fellow at the regional think tank called Chengdu Institute of World Affairs, and also a research fellow at the famous national think tank called the Chahar Institute. So today, my topic is I'm going to talk about from a Chinese perspective of view to see the collaboration between China and Iran, also its influences and opportunities for this whole region. And to start with, I would like to, can I share my screen with the audience? Let's say it's declined. So when I try to share my screen, it's impossible. Is there a possible way for me to do that?
Sorry, I'm trying to do it, but I think it's not possible. I have already requested you to please share your, a PowerPoint presentation if you have, so that we could have arranged it from here. So at the moment, it is not possible for me to.
I understand.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I would like to talk about it from my point of view. And my topic is China breaks through the siege of the West. And if you're interested in my talk, in my speech, you can feel free to get access to my PowerPoint file afterwards, because I'm going to deliver send this to the email provided by Mr. Ahmed. Okay, so to start with, I would like to say that my topic is going to be divided into three different aspects. The first one, I'm going to talk about the status quo, namely the geopolitical environment of China. And the second, I'm going to talk about the necessity of collaboration between China and Iran, and also the Mid-Eastern countries. And the third, I'm mainly going to present and demonstrate the opportunities that we can see during the whole process. So to start with, about the status quo of China, I would have to say, in one word, in summary, it's non-ideal geopolitical environment, because as we see that since Obama's administration, America has shifted their policies, their foreign policies. They have shifted their focus from the Middle East to the Asia Pacific. So it's called pivot to the Asia Pacific policy. So it's since the second term of Barack Obama's administration up until now. So we can see that China is actually facing the pressure, and it's getting more and more serious. And the reason behind it, in my understanding, it was because China has rise up as the second most powerful country in the world. I mean, speaking of the economy, because there is also a statistic that I collected last year, and it says that, in fact, the real purchasing power per capita in China has already surpassed the real purchasing power per capita in America. So that means Chinese people are really getting rich, and this country is getting powerful and rising up. And of course, this is not what America and the American government wants to see, because China is a totally different civilization, in a totally different culture, and it has a totally different ideology with the so-called Western democratic ideology. So of course, for the first time in history, I would like to say, and also a lot of scholars would agree with me, that the Congress of the United States of America has reached a consensus for the first time in history, because they all want to contain China, to contain the rise up of this superpower. But as a Chinese, and also as the Chinese government, of course, the rising up of China is unstoppable and inevitable. So in this process, we now can see there must be conflicts, or I would say a lot of contradictions with countries like America and also other Western countries. So first of all, I would like to say that since last century, the end of last century, there is a very popular saying among the American scholar circle, saying that they can successfully block China by using the so-called IOS chain or island chain. So if you can check the map of China and Japan and South Korea, and also part of the South China Sea, you can see that actually Japan is the ally of America. South Korea, of course, is the ally of America. And when we go down south, we can see Taiwan, of course, is actually the sidekicks of United States of America. And Philippines, it's kind of tricky because it used to be the ally of America, but now it seems to be getting closer to China. And also China has a lot of issues with neighboring countries in the South China Sea. So of course, from this perspective, China has a really terrible geopolitical environment. But also in the same time, we have to shift our eyes to the Western side of China. That's how the One Belt, One Road initiative was launched in the first place. Because if you look at the eastern side of China, there's always a menace, threats, or pressures, or conflicts. So that's how One Belt, One Road initiative came into being in the first place, I would have to say, for your information. So as we can see, geopolitically speaking, China is not really in a good position. Also, China doesn't really have too much advantages. And also, to give you more specific details, I would like to enlighten you by saying and ask you to focus on the famous Sino-US-Alaska high-level dialogue, which happened on March the 18th to 19th this year. So it wasn't really long ago, but I would say, and also a lot of scholars would say, that this is like a milestone dialogue between China and America, because for the first time after the two countries established a diplomatic relationship, we would see something totally different. Some scholar would even label it as like a watershed between these two countries in their diplomatic relationship. Why do I say that? Okay, before this dialogue, basically the relationship between China and America can be deemed as strategic cooperation relation. But after this dialogue, as we can see that Chinese politicians have strong point. They acted also very strongly in the dialogue and exchange of conversation ideas. So after this dialogue, there are a lot of scholars in China which believe the relationship between China and America has turned into a strategic competition or even strategic confrontation. In terms of that, I would like to tell you the reason is because America has did a lot of things before the dialogue. to give China pressure. So I guess that was also one of the reasons why the relationship between China and America would change. But it's not really the major reason. The major reason has lied like for many, many years already because of the rising up of China, which is totally a different civilization and ideology. I think they strongly believe what Huntington said in the Clash of Civilizations, and they believe the Clash of Civilization is inevitable and China could never really embrace America or embrace the American ideology. That's why they would target China now more. So instead of collaborating with China, they would like to compete or even confront with China. So there are 4 events that I like to mention before this dialogue happened so that you can understand perfectly how China was going through and the pressure that China was taking. First of all, on March the 12th, arranged by the United States, Japan, India, Australia, and America held a 4-square security dialogue. It's a video summit, and it's targeting at the coordination with China's neighboring countries to form its own circle and to isolate China. So as we can see, if we
Dr. Danji, may I interrupt you? Now you have the option to share your screen.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Please go ahead.
Okay, now can you see my screen right now?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So that's the first incident that I want to mention. The second event is on March the 16th in US and Japan, they have a meeting between their foreign ministers to issue a joint statement to give a tough stance on the Diaoyu Island, which China and Japan has always have a dispute over its sovereignty. And also the South China Sea issues. And of course, they posed the menace towards China militarily for the first time. And third, on March 18th, the Secretary of State of America, Blinken and Austin, they paid a visit to South Korea to test the possibility of joining the South Korea into their 4 security circle. Of course, once again, they also tried to rekindle the hotspot of DPRK, the nuclear issue of DPRK. And on March the 17th, one day before the dialogue was launched, one day before China delegates arriving in Alaska, the US government actually put sanctions upon the senior Chinese officials because of Hong Kong issues, which of course has broken the bottom lines of the etiquette in major power dialogue. So this is really something Chinese deemed really like bad etiquette, because since you're going to launch a dialogue between each other, but you actually impose the sanctions upon the government officials one day before your dialogue. So basically we can see clearly it's the pressure. USA wants to give China pressure upon the dialogue tables. So that's very clear. So to name just a few, you can tell the pressure that China faces in the world and also between China and America, especially. So of course, I'm going to talk about the necessity of collaboration and why it is Midwest and why particularly it should be the Midwestern countries. I would like to say to summarize it is because China wants to enhance the security of energy and cargo transportation. It's basically a strategic collaboration with Iran. So to understand this, I want to show you 2 maps. Please look at the map on the right first. As you can see, this part is the territory of Iran. This is Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman, also another country. But this position is very crucial position. It's called Kashim Island. I think it belonged to Iran, but China and Iran, they have decided to build a free trade zone on this island. And to understand its geopolitical position, you can look at the left map, and the red arrow actually point the position of the island. So we can see it's at a very crucial and vital position because, as we know that most of the Chinese petroleums were transported, imported from the Mid-Eastern countries and regions, including Iran. I would like to say. So as we can see, if Chinese government can secure the transportation of this route of transportation, it's going to be very crucial. Basically, if we look at Manuka, we have a Manuka Strait, which belongs to Malaysia, but because Malaysia and Singapore are de facto allies of the United States of America. So Manuka Strait is actually under the control of the United States of America. So it's very crucial for Chinese government to have a safe, secure hold of this strait. So that's why China and Iran decided to build a free trade zone on this island together. And it has already started now. Okay, so next I want to give you some of my personal idea on the significance of the 25-year comprehensive cooperation agreement between China and Iran, which has been signed on March the 19th. Basically, in my understanding, I think it's an inevitable outcome of the development of the bilateral relationship between China and Iran. China has long sought the collaboration with Iran because of the One Belt, One Road initiative, and also because it's a friendly neighboring country. And second, I would like to say it's also an attempt by China to build the community with a shared future of all mankind. This has been actually initiated by President Xi Jinping 2 years ago. So that also China could open up to the outside world in the era of globalization. China really needs it. And the third one is, I think it's also a breakthrough act to destroy US bullying and so-called long-arm jurisdiction, because we know America is famous for that, to have the long-arm jurisdiction to actually getting very nosy about other foreign countries' affairs. So this collaboration is basically a breakthrough in this aspect. And about the highlights, I also like to mention about three, because I've read the articles both on the Chinese media and Western media. To summarize, I believe there are three highlights that deserves our attention. The first one is it's a long-term, strategic, and comprehensive cooperation, including China's investment in Iran's infrastructure and future energy interdependence. So this is not only about One Belt, One Road initiative, it's also about security, about regional security too. Second, it's a bilateral trade. Bilateral trade will be settled in digital RMB. This digital RMB is what I believe the opportunity and the biggest opportunity in the collaboration between China and Iran, also between China and also other countries along the road of One Belt and One Road initiative. So I believe it is a new attempt to break the hegemony of the US dollar, but China has no intention of replacing the US dollar system, let alone opposing it. So China doesn't want to oppose any menace towards the US dollar, doesn't want to replace the US dollar, but Chinese RMB is going to make peace. So by then, I believe there will be three major currencies in the world. One is RMB, the second one I believe would be Euro, and the third one would be would be US dollars. Okay, the reason why I said so is because of the economic foundations that China and also the Northeastern Asian countries built over the years. I would say, the free trade zone between China and Japan has been reached and settled for several years. Now South Korea is really interested in to join. And after this free trade zone established, it's going to be so powerful because China is like the second most powerful economy in this world. In Japan and South Korea are developed countries with also really high GDP. And together, I think they're going to collaborate with the other Eastern Asian countries, including the Southeastern Asian countries. And there is a possibility that a unified currency, just like euro, would come into being. That would be like Asian currency. So for me personally, I'm very optimistic about the birth of this unified currency in Asia. So if it does come into being, if it does become the reality, of course, for America and even for European Union, it's going to be a threat. For them, it's something dangerous. It's something risky. It's something that can challenge its position, that can challenge their position in economy, in the world economy, in the world trade. So I don't think it will be welcoming that, but I think that is going to be happening in the near future. And of course, third, that's very obvious. It's going to weaken the influence of the US sanction upon Iran for decades, since the last century. But because of that, Iranian people are living, in a very miserable condition because of the sanctions. And Iran has the highest, I would say, air crash incident in the world because Americans wouldn't export their airplane parts to Iran. So because of that, people's lives are in misery. So basically, because of the signing up of the collaboration between the two countries, I believe Iranian people would find more opportunities, economically speaking, or even their living standards would be greatly improved because of the trade and the exchanges and communications. And lastly, I would like to talk about in detail about the opportunity, so-called the digital RMB. This is something that has already happened. Just, I would say, 2 weeks ago, there was like a small lottery. Like if you apply for the digital RMB, we can get like a small cash of money. So I can tell the government is actually promoting the digital RMB. And also, but as a scholar, I try to look behind this, and these are my understanding toward the digital RMB. So I believe, first of all, it's deemed as the procedures of RMB's internationalization. Once it's digitalized, it's going to be internationalized. And second, it goes beyond the strategy of RMB going out. So for many years, Chinese government are talking about RMB should go out. RMB should influence the rest of part of the world. But this is the best way and the most concrete way, and also the most realistic way, in my understanding. And the third, I would like to say that financially and economically speaking, currency is a very powerful financial tool. So if you have a strong and powerful currency, you have the call in the world. It's just like the US dollars. Since the Bretton Woods system established, and since the US dollars is linked and connected with gold, as we can see up until now, America and the US dollar is the most popular currency in the world, and the US is also the most powerful nations in the world. So currencies, especially a powerful currency, is a very, very great financial tool. So in the confrontation with the US in the future, if we have a strong currency, it's going to combat and confront more easily. And also, of course, this digital RMB currency is going to play a very important role in the One Belt, One Road initiative along the road for all these countries. So everybody's going to enjoy the bonus with the digital RMB. And the next, and we'll share the world together with the US dollar and the euro. So it's like going to make peace with US dollar and euro. People are going to have more options in their national reservation. And I think the most important is the last one. It's going to provide a template for the future collaboration between China and any nation in the world. So, so far, that's all my presentation. And thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Danji. It's wonderful. And please stop sharing your screen. And definitely the emerging political scenario in the region will reduce American influence that we have been facing for decades now, after the USSR disintegration. And the American influence has created several, I don't know, negative impact or the positive impact, whatever, but it has not been very favorable to the regional countries in the region. So can I see, if I see around Senator Mushad Hussain Sayyed Sahab? Senator Saab, are you there? I don't see Senator Mushahid Hassan Sayed there.
Sorry, meanwhile, can I ask a question?
Just a minute, ma'am. Just a minute. Let me finish the agenda first, then we will go for the question and answers. And if Ambassador Nagmana Hashmi is around, Ambassador Nagmana Hashmi. Okay, we move to our next speaker, that is Mr. Hassan Daud Bhatt Saab. He is a CPAC expert and CEO of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Board of Investment and Trade. Hassan Daud Bhatt Saab, please tell us like how this Pak-China deal will influence or benefit of the CPAC, because most of the people, because India has shown reservation that is highlighted in the media that this China-Iran deal would definitely, hit the benefits of India. But do you think like it would improve bilateral relations and multilateral relations of like-minded countries in the region, and it would improve the impact of CPAC? Please go ahead, Hassan Daud Saab. Unmute your mic, sir. Hassan Daud Bhatt Saab. I don't know if there is a problem with the connection. Hassan Daud Bhatt Saab, I would move on to Dr. Najm Abbas. Dr. Najm Abbas is a research fellow, East West Institute, London. And please, Dr. Najm Abbas Saab, you can share your screen as well. Please go ahead. Dr. Najm Abbas.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Can everybody hear me loud and clear?
Yes, please.
Okay. Let me take this time to draw attention to the economic prospects in particular. If I were to sum up the impact that will be brought to the region, it will be as follows. These are the 6 impacts. Firstly, the closing of positions between China and Iran will serve as a pacifying factor for easing regional tensions. They will prod the concerned sides to pursue and make accommodative arrangements towards Iran and towards China. They will also encourage meaningful give and take process between various sides which deal with Iran and China. They would act as a defender of the international order, that is China mainly. And the agreement would also encourage constructive engagements on Iran's nuclear program. So not to allow one party to renegade on the agreement, but to facilitate resumption and revival of the agreements. Number 6, offer incentives for easing out Iran's years-long isolation. And 7th, pursue partnership which is both pragmatic and profitable, not only for Iran in general, but for the Persian Gulf states as a whole. So let me elaborate on those 7. One major factor of this agreement is, rather than excluding parties, it is inclusive. rather than flaming tensions. It is an attempt to douse the sparks so that the tensions in the region are eased. When other countries are pursuing approach to exert military pressure, Iran is urging Iranian counterparts to diplomatic terms, and in that way they are contributing to ease the tensions in West Asia. And that will be a welcome sign for many countries in the region. The region has been a victim of chaos and instability. And it is said, I'm quoting from Wang Yi, the foreign minister's interview to Arabia, the Arabia television news channel, that the region must step out of the shadows of the big power geopolitical rivalry and independently pursue approaches which is suited to the regional realities. So, coming out of external pressure, coming out of interference, and encouraging reconciliatory approach to build a security architecture that accommodates the legitimate concerns of all sides. So this is an inclusive approach, not to exclude a particular actor, but to allow open up the interaction, intermediation between many concerned sides. Now, how this would also allow a meaningful give and take process. So the Chinese Foreign Ministry also proposed that concrete measures should be taken to stop the long arm jurisdiction over third parties. Meaning that if some country wants to trade, wants to purchase oil, or wants to provide technological support, they should not be hampered. Iran should resume fulfilling its nuclear commitments, and the international community should fulfill its part. And as a diplomatic initiative, he said that he proposes to establish a Middle East zone free of nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction. So, not to single out Iran, but to single out the threat due to which Iran was compelled to develop its nuclear program. So, if Iran is given the assurances, in turn, Tehran can also extend the same assurances to other countries. So, that will develop a consensual approach for which all parties can discuss and formulate a route and timetable for the resumptions of the implementations of the joint comprehensive agreement. So, how by this agreement China posits itself as a defender, builder, and contributor to the current international order? It also brings China as it introduces China as a pivotal role as a mediator, especially for the Iranian nuclear issue. And China may well play a key role in facilitating the negotiations, and China would play the role of a peace broker. And in that, it is being stressed that no other major international actor should bar or can bar China's participation and coordination role that it envisages for the Middle East. We have incentives to Iran through this agreement, and I would highlight three. Firstly, that by virtue of this agreement, Iran gains on its side a world power as an ally, and it raises hope that the capacities will be built to counter the consequences of many long years of sanctions that were imposed to isolate the Iranian government because of its nuclear program. Thirdly, it may also help Iran's bid to develop a capacity for overcoming the after effects of the continuing COVID-19 pandemic that has hit the Iranian people very hard. Now, coming to the nuclear program in particular, except for the United States, the other signatories, Germany, France, Britain, Russia, and especially China, have been proposing alternative economic incentives to offset the sanctions which were imposed by the United States. And it is hoped that these endeavors in the region and its engagement with Iran will encourage all signatories to strive and find some space to help Iran reach a middle ground and to bring Tehran to the negotiations for renewed commitments. So it's a win-win formula. In such a manner, China aspires to expand its clout in the international arena by positing itself as a potential troubleshooter for matters which are stuck in a stalemate for years. This is how Iran pursues peace through partnerships in the Persian Gulf and in the West Asia. Now, at the same time, it also has implications for the security equation in the Persian Gulf. So, Alexander Shizavinsky, who writes for Nefty Gaz, a Russian energy bulletin, he has hinted that um, the agreement may also raise Iran's status as a base for troops from China and even allow some partnership with Russia. Just as United States Central Command has bases in Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain, there might be some rights given to Chinese and sometimes Russian planes for refueling and landing from Iranian bases. So this is what the Russian analyst has recently commented about. Now, coming to what circumstances made Iran move close to Beijing. Again, from Russian sources, Dmitry Belyakov says that Iran could not succeed to achieve its strategic goals in the region to have deeper defense cooperation with Russia, with which it had a 20-year partnership from year 2000, and economic cooperation with India, with which it has a pact for development of Chabahar port, has made Beijing virtually an ideal strategic partner for Tehran. From Tehran's perspective, Indian interests have turned out to be too closely tied to the United States to support Tehran at the expense of Washington. So there has been much trade-off, which was causing a distance and compelling Iran to make recalculations of where its interest would lie in future. So now, moving away from the past expectations, Iranian officials are in the process of reassessment and reevaluation. And they say that there has been a growing feeling among Iranian officials, especially those who plan for development of logistics, communication, and infrastructure, that much delays have been caused by past policies, and Iran has missed opportunities vis-a-vis Oman, vis-a-vis United Arab Emirates, vis-a-vis Pakistan and other countries. So and it feels that because of its imprecise policies, it has left behind and it has to make up for that. So that is why infrastructure experts like Mehdi Samsor has written that there is time to change attitudes towards foreign investment, towards public sector investment, as well as towards private sector investment, so that free trade zones, so that tourism opportunities and direct investment opportunities could be made. Now, it is not only connected to Iran, but the positive fallout, the windfall, will also affect the adjoining areas. So it is important to capture and capitalize on the cognition currently prevalent in Tehran that the two neighboring ports, namely Gwadar and Chabahar, are not at cross purpose. China's broader objectives for regional cooperation and development will be beneficial for the two ports, but for the adjoining population as well. And Chabahar has much to gain if it serves as a logistical support for Iranian supplies. And this reasoning is being advanced with the reminder that it's high time for Tehran to take a pragmatic approach for making concrete progress. Now, this also widens the cooperation not just as bilateral but multilateral and especially trilateral. So Pakistan will welcome the fact that China now considers cooperation with Iran because it all comes under the Belt and Road Initiative agenda. And in future, Pakistan has to gain much if Iran could well serve as a crossroad of corridors, providing logistical linkages. And the 25-year partnership plan will reflect China's high level of involvement at a high scale with increased investment and increased participation in different crucial sectors. So I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Najm Abbas, for your wonderful presentation. And I hope you will stay with us and stop sharing your screen. Then afterwards, like we will be having a question and answer session. And Dr. Najm, you will also be participating in it, I believe.
Munir Sahab, I'm back.
Okay. ये screen sharing जरा can you stop sharing your screen?
Please give me 1 minute. Please give me 1 minute.
Okay. I just received a regret from Ambassador Nagmana Hashmi. She was formally posted in Beijing as Pakistan's ambassador, and she got some emergency in the family, so she has to proceed ahead with the family affairs. Meanwhile, I don't know, like if we have.
I'm back. Munir Sahab, I'm back, so I can start from where
I am. Please. And I was looking for Hassan Daud Bhatt Sahab. Oh yeah, he is back. Sorry, Hassan Daud Bhatt Sahab, I was looking for you before Dr. Najm Abbas Sahab, but your connection was disconnected, I believe. And sorry, Dr. Ehsan Sadivi Sahab, I'm really, because I put you on the last because you should, so that you could listen to all the speakers and what expectations they have and what prospects they are and what challenges they are looking for in the region after the China-Iran new collaboration and cooperation framework. So you would be having like more time to respond to.
अपना complete कर लूं जल्दी से.
जी, please, Hassan Daud Sahab, go ahead, please.
Complete. जी, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Munir Sahab, congratulations on getting this bouquet of fantastic speakers, you know, from Dedan, General Durrani. I also see Henry Tillman and my close friend Hussain Askari also present, and some of our colleagues from academia, business circle. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have spoken a lot about geopolitics, and Ms. Kedan also reflected on digital economy and also how digital RMB would impact. I would like to be a little bit candid in what our expectations should be as somebody who's living in a region which is transforming, and it's transforming fast. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in interesting times. We are living in a times where technology and communication is actually reflecting on how we behave and how we build narratives. We are living in a time when taking 800 million people out of poverty is also questioned. We are living in a time where regional connectivity for peace, stability, trade and economics are questioned. And it is only because sometimes geopolitics overtakes geoeconomics. But I think in a country where today the population is over 220 million and it's fast growing at a rate of 2.5, and by 2050 expected to be around 245 million, and in Iran where now if my statistics are correct, then around 92 million, and by 2030 or 2035 this also growing by at a rate of around 2%. Today in Pakistan we have 1.3 million people entering the job market and aspiring for looking at opportunities which can only occur through regional connectivity, through industrialization, through foreign direct investment. And since I deal with investment and trade, I would only be speaking about it, and I do not care how geopolitics reflect, as long as we have policies which can make us rich and which can provide opportunities to our next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are also living in a time when we have 1.6 beds over 1,000 people, and in Iran it is perhaps a little more or a little better. So if we can synergize our policies, and as since Munir Sahab has mentioned me as an expert of CPEC, today we have 22 projects worth 28 billion being being executed in energy, in infrastructure, in optical fiber, and socio-economic development. I think this is a fantastic model which other countries can emulate. And I was in both the Belt and Road forums in 2017 and 19. And the best part was that there in both the forums, Pakistan was discussed as a good case study. And I think if Iran can look at this model, they can also perhaps connect the dots and bring in policies and procedures for seamless trade and interconnectivity. Ladies and gentlemen, in this time and in this crucial time when both Iran and Pakistan are at economic crossroad and looking for opportunities, I think Belt and Road Initiative provides us the beacon of hope, where from people to people connectivity, from seamless trade, uh, uh, from introducing new technologies like we have done recently. We have introduced joint working group on science and technology and joint working group on agriculture. And the challenges and the inflation that both the countries are facing today because of economic challenges and also because of environmental challenges. And this, I think, cannot ask for a better opportunity where China, Iran, Pakistan, and rest of the BRI countries can work together and forge a partnership which can bring prosperity in each of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, I was fortunate to be working on the Gwadar Master Plan and also had an in-depth study on Chabahar and also Hambantota. And I would like to share one example here, and it's on the lighter side. When I was doing this study, I was surprised to see that in Hambantota, Pakistanis have written about 30% more on the Sri Lankan port than even the Sri Lankans. So sometimes we get into discussions which actually do not reflect on what the real state on ground is. I think there is a commonality between Chabahar and Gwadar, and if we can look, especially in the maritime blue economy, I think these two ports can supplement each other. We can have religious tourism, we can have economic growth, and both these ports can actually develop faster than what most of the others are expecting. We developed our road infrastructure, and in next phase we are also developing our rail infrastructure. And the way that rail infrastructure is being developed in Afghanistan, or at least being talked about for development in Afghanistan in the next 10 years, the way rail infrastructure is being developed in Pakistan with its connectivity with our western border through Zaidan, I think this could be a great rail Silk Road besides the maritime Silk Road, which is just adjacent to this rail network. So with this rail network and also the maritime Silk Road, I think Iran and Pakistan can leverage from their geostrategic position. Because of economic reasons, we can enhance trade not just between our two countries, but also regionally and globally. We can actually talk and stamp our positions as pivotal role in the Belt and Road.
Hassan Dal Saab.
Important thing that we should learn right now, both Iran and Pakistan, is the poverty alleviation model of China and the way that they have taken so many people out of poverty. I think Pakistan and Iran can learn from that, and even rest of the world can learn from that, and not talk too much, and perhaps bring in the socio-economic development. Ladies and gentlemen, through China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, we are connecting less developed area of our country with urban centers. And this connectivity would ensure the socio-economic development that we all hope for and our next generation is hoping for. We are looking in the next ways in industrial development, industrial cooperation, in 9 economic zones. And if we can have economic zones and the free trade zone at Gwadar, and with that connected to the economic zone in Iran, in Oman, and also in United Arab Emirates, I think this chain of special economic zone can create an island of industries which can supplement each other and create the supply chain which we all are expecting, and I think mitigate some of the risks that we are expecting. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I think that, and I believe that geoeconomics, industrialization, jobs, and economic growth can mitigate some of the risks that we are talking about. I think the US-China trade war and also COVID would give some reasons of relocation of industries from Asia, and perhaps this is a great opportunity for us to take advantage and create enabling environment which can create the pull factor for those industries to come. We are also expecting Chinese industry and connecting to the Chinese supply chain, and perhaps the digital RMB would support that process. If that's, and we can perhaps in special economic zones like Rashakai and Dhabeji in Sindh and also in Punjab, if we can introduce this as a case study, and from there expand its connectivity with the other economic zones and areas, I think that this has a great promise. So lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I think any regional economic initiative supports the region. It supports economic activity, and economic activity is always helpful. And I think the distance of thousands of miles is taken by first step. So Iran and China has taken their first step. We had taken our steps earlier. We have an advantage of 5 years. And I think in these 5 years, Pakistan has demonstrated that we are a country which can absorb and actually attract investment worth around 30 billion in just 3 years, because the initial 2 years were about policy formulation and understanding. So we can supplement each other, and I congratulate my colleagues in Iran and in China for this initiative. And I think in very near future, this China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, Iran-China, and also rest of the corridors within the belt, and all the 6 corridors within the Belt and Road Initiative would be connected. I think when we talk of India not participation, we should also look at the model of AIIB, because some of the countries which are not actually supporting BRI are trying to take economic advantages through the Asian Infrastructure Bank, where India is also a partner. So I think we should not look at the general media narrative, but look at the facts on ground and how countries are looking at it as an economic activity and economic possibility. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hassan Daud Barsab. Now, I would like to go to Dr. Ehsan Sadeghi Saab. He is a research fellow with Tehran International Studies and Research Institute. He's from Tehran. Ehsan Sadeghi Saab, do you hear me? Ehsan Sadeghi Sahab, Mr. Ehsan Sadeghi. Hello, Ehsan Sadeghi.
Hello, do you my voice? Do you my voice?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Now you have heard different speakers speaking about the prospects that China and Iran new cooperation will have in the region. And so having heard like different opinions, what do you see like how Iran perceive the new collaboration with China and how they would be interacting or engaging the other countries in the region and how it would help reduce the isolation of Iran globally. Please go ahead, Dr. Ehsan Sadeghi Saab, please.
Thank you very much, Munir Ahmad. I'm very happy to be in this virtual meeting. My voice is good?
Yes, we can hear you properly.
Okay, okay, thank you. In this virtual meeting and to make new friends here, especially new friends from Pakistan. It's my pleasure. Fortunately, I have a good chance because most of participants in this virtual meeting mentioned the main and good points about the main discussion of the meeting. And especially from Dr. Najem Abbas and Dr. Digan from China. They have mentioned very good and useful good points about the main discussion of the meeting and about Iran and China relations and the role of the Pakistan in this relation. It's very useful for me. For the first of all, as an observer of Iran-China relations, I believe that China is a great power and a new reality in our region. I express my opinion about Iranian perspective about the China in the region and China-Iran relations. It's a Iranian perspective. China is a great power and a new reality in our region. And also Iran is a regional power. Two countries cannot ignore each other. You can find the importance of relations between Iran and China in the words of Wang Yi, Chinese Foreign Minister, and Mr. Javad Zarif, Iranian Foreign Minister. Mr. Wang Yi said that Iran is a strategic and permanent Iran relations. China relations with Iran is strategic and permanent. And Mr. Javad Zarif said that China is our friend in difficult times. It's a reality, not a rhetoric thing. And Mr. Wang Yi said that last Saturday that China supports the sovereignty and dignity of Iran. So I think, first of all, as an observer of Iran-China relations, I believe signing of Iran-China deal last Saturday is a turning point and a new chapter in relations between two countries after 50 years establishing relations between two countries. Although this deal is not an agreement, but it's a roadmap for designing a better future for relations and communications between Iran and China. We are now witnessing the overlap of key interests of both Iran and China in the face of international and regional development, especially about the importance of multilateralism between rising and non-Western powers for solving international issues and problems. We have witnessed over the past 4 years since Donald Trump took office in the United States and during the presidency of Donald Trump, the issue of unilateralism was one of the main problems and challenges in international relations. China and Iran also did their best to resist US unilateralism against US and Donald Trump. Now, the leaders of Iran and China have a serious determination to further develop their relations. And of course, the signing of this agreement is only a first step in this framework. And there are many steps left to implement this agreement. During 2020 year until now, China in many fronts, including in international organizations, for example, in IAEA, in the UN Security Council, they support us from to the face of the US unilateralism sanctions. And now we see the purchase of Iranian oil and energy from Iran. You can find it in the Chinese customs and news agencies reports about the continuing oil flow to China. It is very important for us. About the economic aspects of this agreement, at the beginning as a first step can facilitate relations between two countries in all dimensions, especially in the fields of economy and trade. It depends on how the countries want to pursue the path of relation based on comprehensive strategic partnership based on the specific roadmap. About economy, I should say both countries have many advantages for each other, and the economies of both countries are complementary. According to available statistics including China Customs and news agencies, China is the largest trading partner and regular customer of energy, including our oil. China has always been a buyer of our oil, and even now it continues to buy Iranian oil despite illegal and unilateral US sanctions. Now, 3 years after the withdrawal of the United States from the UN, from the JCPOA, we see that China continues to buy oil from Iran despite US sanctions, and unfortunately, some Chinese individuals and companies have been subject to US sanctions. This shows us that China attaches a special importance to its relation with Iran. The signing of this agreement between Iran and China can estrange the current position of relations between the two countries. Also, Iran needs foreign investment for developing and expansion its infrastructure. Within framework of a clear roadmap, China's position in Iran's oil and gas industries could develop and expand it. A clear roadmap, including the recent agreement in Tehran, could be effective in this regard. About the stability and security, I should say, as the two leaders of the two countries have pointed out, this agreement does not pose any threat to third parties. But I have to make a point here, and that is that both Iran and China have common ground on issues related to regional security and stability, and are trying to promote multilateralism both at the regional level and at the interregional level. The recent agreement in Tehran could be a positive political and security basis for this action. Let's not forget that in recent months, China has launched and offer initiatives on regional security and multilateral dialogue. As in recent years, Iran has offered initiative on security in Persian Gulf region. This shows that Iran and China have common interests in this regard. China's role in the Gulf and West Asian security, and also offer initiative about the security and stability in the region, including multilateral initiative, dialogue platform from China, shows us that China is ready to be more active in regional security. This is important for Iran, and the recent Tehran agreement could facilitate the spread of multilateralism in our region in resolving the region's security problem and challenges. The main challenges in our region is military intervention of Western powers in our region, and military adventurism from some of our country in our region. And in the end, for Iran's relations with India, I should say that Iran is an independent country and strives to have equal relations with all countries on the basis of mutual respect, just as we have friendly relations with China. We also have good relations with India. Both countries, India and China, are two great Asian and emerging powers that can play an important role in shaping the great Asian century. Unfortunately, due to US sanctions, India was not able to continue to buy energy from Iran as it should have been. And we even saw that they did not fulfill their obligation properly in the case of Chabahar development projects. But China is our friend in hard times. China, all told, under the US sanctions, China continued to buy oil of Iranian, according to Chinese customs and some news agencies. But in the end, I emphasize again that Iran wants to have an equal relationship with all countries on the basis of mutual respect, especially with all of the Asian countries, especially with Pakistan and China. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ehsan Sadki Sahab, for your presentation. And still, I don't see Senator Mushahid Hussain Saab if he's around. No, he's not around. I will go back to Lieutenant General retired Asad Durrani Sahab for a couple of questions. I see a couple of hands also already waiting for their comments and or maybe some questions. Asad Durrani Sahab, General Sahab, are you there? Durrani Sahab, are you there? Yes. Thank you very much. Durrani Sahab, I have a question. Like as we have seen in the media about this deal, and as the speakers have also mentioned, and you have also talked about the American interest. When this, because gradually we have seen China having wonderful relations and growing relations and strengthening relations with the countries in the region. And as Dr. Sadki mentioned, that China is friend in hard times, and we also see China as a like a very wonderful friend in hard times, and he has China has contributed always like in the time of need. So this is the thing, and when on the other hand we have seen India-US relations flourishing more in strategic ways, and so like when China will be having more cooperation with Iran, as the speakers mentioned, American influence in the region will be decreasing. So when the influence will be decreasing, then what would be the challenges or the measures would be taken by the United States of America? Please go ahead.
Indeed, the right question, because as I was trying to suggest that on the global chessboard, powers, a group of powers, they make their move. Post 9/11 comes the formation of the SCO. Quad comes into being after some time, not as a counter move, but as something that the Americans would like to call pivot to Asia, some sort of a counter move, some sort of, or at least asking the regional powers to now find out if they can do anything else. For me, of course, the Pakistani initiative of the first decade of the century was pivotal, absolutely marvelous, in which we brought 4 or 5 countries, or we tried to bring 4 or 5 countries together, essentially because of the Afghan quagmire. And now, if this is something that's happened, I'm sure the Americans will be working on some responses. For example, fast tracking their withdrawal from Afghanistan, maybe one. Revisiting the nuclear deal with Iran, I think some efforts have already started, maybe coincidentally or incidentally, but that has happened. Probably for Pakistan, one of the most interesting development would be to see, because already in India, because of this particular development, enough number of people are talking about another aspect. It was fine. We were, trying to balance China for other reasons, and Pakistan, of course, indeed must always remain on our wrong side. But what if the Iranians, who not only Chabahar board, but their access to Central Asia, if they also come firmly in the camp of this particular axis or nexus or group or and the group of nations which are working in this region probably more effective than anyone else. If that were to happen, shouldn't they now try and reverse a couple of their policies, for example, on Afghanistan? That is quite a big possibility. I think ultimately the Indians might find, because they have been on the wrong side of geography, if not history, that some rethinking on this front would be necessary. So I'm only trying to suggest or trying to speculate as to what might happen, but something will happen because I think people will be thinking of how to take care of or how to notice, how to play, how to counter this particular move, which is in fact quite a spectacular one. It's not those ordinary things in which, tactically you join one or the other, or you take one or the other step, or you take one or two other policy, or you go back on a particular policy. So that is what I think is likely to happen.
Thank you. I have another question, General Durrani. Iran is not a country that changed its decision on one call. Very, very bold and
Yes.
statement, very bold sentence from the Chinese foreign minister on the occasion they signed the deal. What it reflects? Frustration or like disappointment from the long cherished friend?
I'll consider it as a friendly nudge. Because in all honesty, I mean, civilization nations like Iran and China, of course, take their decisions in the long run. They try and play the hard ball in achieving them. That is absolutely true. In this particular case, I think when I say friendly nudge, because I think people know that Pakistan over a period of time has taken very many decisions that were favorable both to China and to Iran. Early histories and early 80s in my intervention, in my presentation, brief presentation, I talked about it. We had done it. We are actually the ones who started building or bringing the region together about 15 years ago. True. But then this is also a fact that at times we have, shown a little weakness in following up certain policies post 9/11 on Afghanistan, not going to Kuala Lumpur because of this time a call from the Holy Land. And lastly, something which is very controversial here, but I think there is something in it post Pulwama, the return of Abhinandan within 24 hours, that may have happened because of one or two calls from different directions. It may have happened with the result that momentarily people applauded, but ultimately said one did not get enough for it. Now, these are a couple of instances that have taken place, and a little help to be given by friendly countries like China and Iran will always be standing us in good stead and will help us do a little tough bargaining on matters that are of interest to us.
General Durrani, there is another question that the people are taking this deal as this deal would like China would like to have more influence in the Middle East, and as the speakers also mentioned that that would enhance Chinese influence in the Middle East, and also like this deal is expected to have more influence in the Middle East region. Do you think like it would also curtailing a Saudian influence ultimately in the region and in the which we quote unquote Muslim Ummah that or like it would also impact OIC that has already sort of a dead elephant? Please get on the run style.
If you invest this type of money, if you have grown over a period of time with such patience, and if you get counted nowadays as the first major threat by the mighty United States, it's obvious that the influence will be either on the way up or the way down, depending upon such developments. As far as the Middle East is concerned, if I have to take just the post-Syrian development, one can see that it's not the Chinese alone who have gained in influence. The Russians, the Chinese, the Turks. These three countries have started mattering much more, also to the benefit of Iran. And how we position ourselves is up to us. We used to do it pretty well by balancing between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now I think after a couple of unwise moves by Saudis, by Mohammed bin Salman, like Yemen and like sucking up to certain demands from the United States or from Tel Aviv, our job has become a little more difficult, but at the same time, the decision making has been facilitated to the extent that now we can actually, with all clear conscience, join this new development to our benefit. And be sure, temporarily, some people will be upset, but ultimately, this is the policy that's going to be helpful to us, and by implication, if not to all the Muslim countries, to most of them. That is how they have been brought around over a period of time. Africa is also a very good example as to how slowly, painfully, the Chinese have worked to break some of the African countries away from their traditional, linkages in the West.
Durrani, Sahab, do you think like it would rejuvenate?
Munir Sahab, can I just say a word on this because I worked on BRI from the start. I think we should not look at how others would be at a disadvantage. We should look at what opportunities it offers and how we can leverage our advantages. Sometimes we get into discussions, like as I said on Hambantota, Pakistanis wrote so much about Hambantota as I think more than the Sri Lankan. So perhaps this is the time that we should look at what opportunities are there for us, for Iran, and for the entire region, including each one of us. And I think even the Saudis, and based on my own interactions with them, they understand so many risks that the second economic power of the world, so many risks are mitigated by doing business with the second economic power. Look at what UAE is doing with China and how a lot of bridges are being built, economic bridges are being built. So this is huge opportunity, and I think this is not at the disadvantage for any country. It's all for the good of of the region, for Belt and Road Initiative, and for globalization. I think because of pandemic, globalization was as a concept was hit hard, but I think through economic integration and through initiatives like Belt and Road and China, Pakistan, and Iran, China economic initiatives, I think we can build on the bridges. The world needs to work together to address pandemic, to address poverty, and this can hope only happen if we look at the opportunities and not at the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hassan Daud
Assalamu
साहब.
alaikum, sir.
सरवत आप जरा 1 मिनट ठहर जाइए, 2 मिनट. General साहब, my question was like everyone knows the concept of Muslim Ummah, and OIC has turned to be a redundant regime, and it had never played any significant role in the economic prosperity or the solidarity or whatever, like to become more prosperous or economic for the economic collaboration. Do you think that the in the coming years, the redundant regime that I said would be rejuvenated with the new elements coming in and playing more active role? General Durrani sahab.
You see, there are usually, 2 or 3 different approaches when we address such issues. One is, if not a wishful, it's well-meaning, but it tries to give a message as to what we should be doing. And that is always possible, because if we make practical recommendations, people may. The other is a little more difficult, as what is likely to happen. And in that, one looks at, how decision making in certain parts will take place, what other considerations they may have, who are the stakeholders in a one or a country or a group of countries. And there you find out that all these good wishes and recommendations are usually not achievable, because there are impediments which are equally strong. And that's why, you come to the conclusion, this is something that is likely to happen. For example, we can talk about the opportunities that are available, but you can be also quite assured that once this development goes in favor of 1 or 2 countries, their rival countries will try their best to diminish that effect or come up with something different. Now, that's the nature of things. Not everyone gets onto a particular bandwagon and says, hurrah, now we know the road to nirvana is now open and we could do it. That is something that has, if you take into account that even the Chinese would say, don't look for the best solution because it's not available. Second, third are the ones that usually we will make use of.
Thank you, General Durrani. Now, I would like to go to Dr. Dan G. Dr. Dan G, are you there? Dr. Dan?
Yes, yes,
yeah,
please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I have a question, like, do you think, like, in the coming days, recently we have witnessed some conflict and some fight as well on the borders of Ladakh and,
Yes.
On the other hand, US and India strategic collaboration has increased, and as the media portray that India is the proxy for the Cold War or the economic war against China. But besides that, we see the economic collaboration and trade is, steadily increasing and goes on smoothly. How do you see this new, like India has reservations, and the Indian media has shown the China-Iran deal as some dent to the benefits, economic benefits, and strategic benefits in the region. How do you see it particularly, Dr. Dan?
Okay, so from my perspective, as far as I am concerned, I think the conflicts happening on the border between China and India is only political issues. So even though because of that, the Indian people may bear hatred or dislike towards Chinese government or even Chinese people, that's understandable. However, what cannot be ignored is China is a superpower in economy and also politics. So even though on the level of on the political levels, there will be conflicts, there will be disputes over a lot of issues. You cannot ignore the existence of China. You cannot ignore the power of China. You cannot ignore that China is probably one of the most powerful manufacturing country in the world. That it actually provides the most comprehensive supply lines in the world. So for India, if it wants to develop, it cannot ignore the existence of China and the power of China. That's what I believe. So of course, on the political level, people may have the hatred or dislikes towards China, but deep down they know India and China are closely related to each other. I mean, at least from the economic point of view, it's strongly intertwined with each other. And besides, don't forget about the fact that both India and China are emerging markets in the world. And we even have a BRIC country, right? So there are 5 BRIC countries, and they're all emerging markets. And for emerging markets, in the era of globalization, it's naturally intertwined, and it's deeply intertwined with each other, economically, culturally, trade. So I don't think it's a problem. And what I found is pretty interesting is, I mean, on one hand, I can see Indian people may have the hatred or dislikes towards the Chinese government and even people, but as Chinese, we don't really have too much hatred or dislikes towards Indian. On the mass media, we could not find the clue like that. Like nobody would talk about the hatred, nobody would talk about the nationalism towards Indian. But I do notice, because at that time I was in United States of America as a visiting scholar, and I noticed on Twitter and also Facebook, there are a lot of Indian people who have hatred towards Chinese people and the nation as a whole. So that really is very interesting for me. I think it's because by essence, Chinese people have more confidence nowadays. So there are a lot of people who don't really concerned about the so-called negative impressions or understanding towards China, because Chinese people are more confident about what we're doing right now, the position we're holding right now, the stance we're having right now. I think that's the major reason. So I'm not worried about it at all. And I don't think India should be worrying about that either. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Dan, thank you very much. Now, I would request Henry Tillman to introduce yourself, and if you have some comments to offer, please go ahead. Henry Tillman, please introduce yourself and unmute your mic, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay,
yeah,
now?
Yeah, I can hear you, please.
Thank you very much. I was invited by Hassan Askari and our friend Hassan, whom I've known for years.
Good, great.
I founded and manage a company that's in the merchant banking business and also in the research business. And the company is called China Investment Research. We're quite visible in providing clean data for many countries. I've been to Pakistan twice in 2017 to look at the loan portfolio, which was the press was greatly misinformed about it, which is fine. Thank you very much in terms of structures. And in 2018 to talk about the SEZs, I see 3 of which have already been implemented. I've been going to China since 1996, and maybe at a high level, Professor Dr. Dan, I have just we published, back to your map, we published with SIIS on Oman on your map in 2019. We have a joint venture with SIIS. We also just published on the Global Health Silk Road with SIIS. So,
please go ahead about your comments on the topic.
Thank you. So on the topic itself, on the Hassan, if you will, the numbers support what Hassan is saying. The numbers in terms of Pakistan in the last several years has increased substantially in terms of venture capital. The same has been true throughout the MENA region. So you now have plenty of capital flowing in many of those markets, which will ultimately flow into stock markets, which is what you're seeing in the Pakistan stock market. So capital is flowing in from Singapore, from UAE, from other parts of Europe. So that's a very positive sign. So I want to support Hassan with his statements. And on the Iran numbers themselves, if you go to last year's deals, it was 400 were split over 25 years. That's 17 billion a year. The current trade between China and Iran is only 18 billion a year. So these are not big numbers. They appear to be big numbers. They're simply doubling a small number over a 25-year period of time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Hello Tillman. Now I would request Azhar Aslam Sahab, please say if you have any question to ask. Azhar Aslam Sahab. Mr. Azhar Aslam, I don't know like if he's around, and meanwhile I would please go ahead. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. This is Dr. Azhar Aslam from London. It's been a very interesting and long discussion, and there are lots of participants, so I'll have to be very, very quick. And but just one comment before. I'm sorry to say, but it's people like Mushahid Hussain which are an epitome of the failure of Pakistan. Passing on from that, I just have one question from Dr. Danji, because everybody has contributed so well, but I have to restrict myself. Dr. Danji, if you can kindly explain, I heard that you were saying about China, not in terms of economic and political power, but you talked about the cultural and civilizational power as well. And I have to ask you a question that the dominant paradigm of atheistic, secular, capitalistic model has been adopted by China itself, then where and there is no discernibility of Chinese civilization or culture being as a dominant culture or civilization. How would you see it playing out, particularly with the view that China's population is aging, and in the next 50 years there'll be more older people than younger people, and compared to that, United States is always open to immigration and will continue to absorb young entrepreneurial minds. And although it seems as if this century might be China's, but would it really be? And would you be able to offer any alternative to the dominant paradigm at this point in time? Because there isn't seem to be from China.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aslam. Thank you very much. I do agree that the population in general in China is aging, and it's becoming like the top issue, top concerns of the government. So that's why they have lately issued like a more, I would say, loose regulation on the family planning. Like in the northeastern part of China, all the northeastern provinces, they don't have any restriction on having the babies. So they can give birth to as many babies as they want. So basically, there are very flexible policies going on nowadays, and it's been changing all the time. And the top concern, of course, is to keep the so-called bonus of population in China, since it's really like a growing engine for the future. Well, in that sense, I would say India do have more bonus in the future, because India is going to surpass China as the most populated country in the whole world. I do agree. So as you can see, the Chinese government is actually taking action on this. So they have realized the problem already. But on the other hand, I will have to say the younger generations of Chinese are not so willing to give birth, to have babies. They prefer to have dinky families. They prefer to have nuclear families. So that's why the government is trying every means to encourage people to have more babies. But it is a problem, I have to confess. But the thing is, as you said, the so-called secret of the development of the United States of America for many years is because it keeps attracting the elites of all fields to come over to America to achieve and to accomplish its dreams, American dreams to be more specific, so that American can stay the top country, the best country in the world for a long period of time. I do agree. And in China, it's actually adopting the same method because President Xi Jinping, I say approximately 5 years ago, no, more than 5 years ago, mentioned the so-called China dream, Chinese dream. So basically, Chinese is adopting the same policy like United States of America. China is attracting elites from all over the world too, providing with them all kinds of facilities they need, resources they need, and also money. So there are a lot of, I would say, talented people nowadays coming over from overseas to China. There are a large number of them were actually Chinese who have joined the foreign citizenship, and they found the opportunities and the resources in China, which is way better than they have in the foreign countries. So they decided to come back to China to help China to build the country. So basically, there are a lot of favorable policies. Like in China, we have so-called 1,000 planning, 千人计划. There are also 100 planning. Okay, it's called talent planning. So 百人计划. So it's programs like this to attract talents from all over the world to go over to China and to help China to build its home. And third, you mentioned how come China could provide a protocol to the outside world to show that Chinese way could also work. And you, according to what you said, it seems that you don't really have confidence in it. But what I want to tell you is, please look at an African country called Ethiopia. Ethiopia is actually taking the Chinese way of development, the Chinese way of doing the business, of managing its economy. And Ethiopia is now, I would say, a rising superstar in African countries, among the African countries. It's getting richer and richer, and it's developing by leaps and bounds. So it's an amazing country, because I have a friend from Ethiopia, and she showed me about the economy there. She showed me about the pictures there and their life there. And she also told me their government actually adopted the Chinese policy. So I was really impressed by that, because even though the Chinese government never want to promote the so-called Chinese way to the outside world, we can see that an African country called Ethiopia is actually taking after it, and actually is quite successful so far. So I think maybe this example can answer your question. But I mean, generally speaking, Chinese government don't really care if any country would adopt the so-called Chinese way of developing its own economy or society. The Chinese government didn't really care about it at all, because the government of China mainly focused on whether the China could work out its own problem and to move on forward continuously, and to promote the living standards of its own population. The Chinese government does not want to promote its political models to the rest of the world. That's the biggest disparities between Chinese government and American government. But I do agree that America is doing a very great job promoting its own democratic system and pattern in the rest part of the world. But we can also see in some countries it didn't work. So I think the shrewd part of Chinese government is we mind our own business. The government minds Chinese business only. It doesn't really care about promoting the mode to the rest of the world. So maybe Ethiopia is the single individual example, but I mean, in the future, I'm not sure. I think it's really worth trying for other countries. But again, I would like to say that's not what Chinese government wants to do in the first place. It's Ethiopia who made their own choice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Danji. Now I would request Ehsan Sadiki. Are you there, Ehsan Sadiki? Mr. Ehsan Sadiki, are you there? Yeah.
Yes, I
My
hear you.
question is, what role you see after this deal uh, in the Middle East, Iran's role in the Middle East afterwards? What do you see?
I think, although there is no, I reiterated that there is no details about this agreement, and we have also only a specific roadmap for the better future for relations between two countries in the future. And as I before said, that this agreement does not pose a threat to any party in our region and in the Middle East. But I think the China always support Iran in regional and international arena because China is more active in the international arena, and two countries have many common grounds in this specific. But I think Iran, via this agreement with China, has an upper hand in the region, and get a more confidence for regional and solving the problems with other neighbors, including with Pakistan, including with Turkey. And this is, I think, the agreement between Iran and China could facilitate more cooperation between other countries. And I also hope that China should play a greater role in convergence and integration between three regional powers, including Iran, Turkey, and Pakistan, plus China. And we have a new chapter in our region. And that is because we have a new agreement with China, although it is a roadmap, but it facilitates the relations between the regional powers, including Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, and China. And we have a new chapter in our region. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hassan. Umar Khayyam Sab has raised hand. If Umar Khayyam is around, no. Please, Muhammad Waqas. Muhammad Waqas, sir, please go ahead and ask your comment. Your
Yes, so
question,
my
please.
question is, yes, thank you, sir. My question is from Dr. Dem from the Chengdu Institute of International Affairs. So my question is like, because as you mentioned in the previously, there was a discussion about Ethiopia and some of the other countries where the Belt and Road Initiative is, there is a lot of investment. So in the case of Malaysia and Sri Lanka, we see some issues which arise. But the common narrative is like that it was more due to the internal, dynamics of these countries, like Malaysia's internal politics and Sri Lanka's internal politics. So how do you think the Chinese government, the Communist Party, and the Belt and Road Initiative, which is launched by them, so how will they make the harmony with the internal political dynamics of the visiting countries like Pakistan and Iran? Thank you.
Dr. Danji, about internal political situations.
Okay, I see. I didn't really hear you that clearly, so I will try my best to answer your question. So is your question like, how come Chinese government help the country along the One Belt, One Road initiative? Is that correct?
How can they match their frequency or harmonize with the internal political dynamics? of the recipient countries?
Okay. Thank you very much for your question. First of all, I would like to explain the Chinese government never ever interested in other countries' internal affairs. So in terms of One Belt, One Road initiative, by essence, I want to tell you, the essence is China found there is a great barrier, obstacle for the communication between China and the Western world. I mean, like the most developed Western world. So it seems there is a lot of barriers. There would be trade barriers, there would be economic barriers, there would be communication barriers, there would be political barriers too. So under that circumstances, the leaders of China decided to find another way out. So that's why they launched the One Belt, One Road initiative. Basically, it's an alternative thing to do because the communication with the Western world isn't really successful. Let me put it that way. So by essence, it's something like that. And also it coins the concept of the ancient Silk Road in China when people transport the silk and tea and porcelain from China all the way to Europe. So in that sense, how come China or Chinese government would help the countries and people along the road? According to the policy that I know, it's basically China is going to invest a lot of money to help the local people and nations to build the infrastructure. So when the infrastructure is done, there will be Chinese businessmen to do investment over. So it's not only the investment of infrastructure, but also investment of other businesses. So basically, it's only doing business. The Chinese government doesn't really care about, let's see, to impose the Chinese political influence in those regions. So basically, it's to do business and to help the local people. That's what they wanted to do. But of course, in the same time, the influence of Chinese culture would be spread along the road, all the way to the Europe, all the way to Africa. That's what I understand about this policy. I hope I have answered your question well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Danji. Sarbat Kazmi Sahaba, are you there? Sarbat Kazmi Sahaba, if you are there, you can ask your question right now. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Sir, I was listening to all the speakers, and our these speakers have spoken about all this change scenario, economical scenario that is developing right now. As far as I see,
your parrot is also asking, I don't know how many questions.
My parrots are really asking, like, I have many questions on it as well. So the thing is, there are really many questions when come to the economical development that is happening in region, and that is changing very fastly.
Yeah.
If we look around, we see Pakistan has also always
supported question,
whenever
please.
It is asked.
Yes, sir. So my question have already consumed our time. Yeah, please go ahead.
Exactly. My question is, in this building scenario, we welcome and we really like Iran over there as a good partner, as a good neighbor. But what about our policy will be, being a Pakistani? Do we have a confirmed policy for Indians and the pressure that is built by the America over there? My question is very simple, but answer lies, I know, many hidden things in it. So I would like our Jan Dean to answer me about that. What she really looks about that a relationship of America to all the countries around over here, because you are playing as a big brother over here, and I really appreciate that role you are doing.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your wonderful question. Dr. Danji.
Okay, I could only answer this question from a totally Chinese perspective of view. Okay, I would say it's a purely Chinese perspective, so it doesn't really, and I would say it's also my personal perspective. So I cannot represent all the people. In my understanding, I would say for America as a nation, because it views itself as the beacon of the democracy, the beacon, the leader of the whole world. So it has always been engaging itself in the career of promoting its democracy, its political system, democracy to the rest of the world. And in the same time, of course, it aims to spread the culture, the influence of America to the rest of the world in the same time. But China is very, very different. China, it doesn't really have such kind of ambition. China would only want to mind its own business because we have so many problems, even in China. So Chinese people or Chinese government don't really want to sell its so-called pattern or mode to the rest of the world. And it doesn't really look at itself.
I wish Pakistan could have such a stance.
Dr. Nanji, please go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you clearly.
Ma'am, I really appreciate this thing. Just I want to say is we could say, take the same stance as you have doing, mind our own business and developing our own economical and technical resources to deal with all those things. I really appreciate that. I wish Pakistan could have such things with it as well.
Dr. Sarva Saba, let her speak, please. Thank you.
For Pakistan, Pakistan is China's all-weather friend and brother. That's for sure. That's what the Chinese people, as well the Chinese government, believe. So it's like all weather. So that means, given it rain or sun, we will always stand together. So Pakistan is a very, very important partner with China. And I'm really optimistic about the bilateral relationship between China and Pakistan, to be frank. And it's really working in a very good way, in a very healthy way, with all these, like the economic corridors, with the economic ties and exchanges. And Chinese people, other people also have very positive impression towards Pakistani people, because Pakistani people always stand with Chinese people. And in our mass media, there are always reports covering how Chinese people were treated in Pakistan, because they were usually treated very nicely, just like friends. So basically, people have very positive impression towards Pakistan and Pakistani people. Thank you very much. I hope I can.
Thank you very much, Munisa.
Hassan Saab,
I would like to say, Munisa, I just like to say a word on the Pakistani perspective on the Sarvat Sahiba's question, and also taking lead from what Ms. Gah has highlighted. I had the opportunity of working with Professor Lin Ifu, who had worked on Ethiopian model, and also as a structural economic, guru in China. We spoke about Ethiopia and how from only a shoemaking hub, starting from labor-intensive industry, they had now looking at diversifying their industry. And he came to Pakistan in 2017, and we stayed together for 15 days and traveled along Pakistan, went to all chambers on the request of the government of Pakistan. So what we are looking at is that Pakistan's Pakistan economic structure has to be dealt in its own way. Like the Chinese characteristics, Pakistan has its own unique characteristics of doing and handling its economy. And that can only be addressed if we look at our problems and then do a SWOT analysis, look at our strengths and weaknesses, and from there. So I can only speak for Rashakai because I am responsible for Rashakai in many ways as their CEO of the CISA. What we are doing is that we are trying to attract three kinds of industries. One is the labor industry, a labor-intensive industry in the first case, where, which is easy for us to embrace, not too much of technology training or vocational training is required. immediately we can start with shoemaking and perhaps textile. And with about 15 days to 1 month's training, people can actually start working on this and it can give its dividend. And consumer electronic technology, like the model that we had in higher Ruba's case, where consumer products like electronics, mobile phone, air conditioners could be through a training of about 6 months, we can have and embrace this technology. And from there, inshallah, and since we have a lot of English speaking young population, which has a good knack of e-commerce, we are also trying to leverage our e-commerce. And just for your information, I was responsible for during the COVID looking at e-commerce council as a secretary, and there were about 300 million words of trade done through e-commerce alone from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So this is great actually, and I see a lot of female population coming into e-commerce, especially in pharmaceutical sector. And this is the model that we are using in CPAC also. Three phases were identified. The first phase for CPAC was for time of identifying the bottleneck and removing them, especially in energy and infrastructure, optical fiber. From there, graduating into SEZs, for which by 2025 we should be able to have at least 3 SEZs working. And from there, actually looking at a period of consolidation, when in by 2030 to 2035, we should have our ML1 in place. And this should be connected with Afghanistan through Zaidan and also for Afghanistan and Iran. And this is the economic dividend that we are looking at through BRI and CPAC. And I think Ms. Dan would agree that by using our own characteristics and our own model, Pakistan can benefit more rather than emulating any other model.
Okay, thank you, Hassan Daud Barsab. And now it's time to close our this webinar, and we have already exceeded the limit that we have set for this webinar. Maybe we can have more relevant topics next week, or maybe after the next week, and we can keep on deliberating on such issues. And as we can debate on, definitely we can come to certain conclusions, and we can come to know more about the prospects of prosperity that we are into. And I must thank Lieutenant General Retired Asad Durrani Sahab, former ISI Chief and Strategic Analyst, Dr. Dan Ji, Research Fellow from Chengdu Institute of World Affairs. And I also thank Dr. Ehsan Sadiki, Research Fellow, Tehran International Studies and Research Institute from Tehran, and Dr. Najm Abbas, Research Fellow, East-West Institute, London, and last but not least, Hassan Daud Bhatt Sahab, CPAC expert and CEO of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Board of Investment and Trade. And thank you so much, all the participants, those who joined us today. And this is really, I would like to note down with all of that Senator Mushahid Hussain Sayyid, the chairman, Senate Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, could not join us. And same is the case with Ambassador Nagmana Hashmi, who is the former ambassador of Pakistan in Beijing. If they would have been around us, definitely we would have much clear point of view of Pakistan government. Even then, like if they could not join us, but we had wonderful discussion. We will continue doing so. Once again, thank you very much, all the speakers and the participants, for being with us. See you next Saturday, 1 p.m. with different theme, with different topic of the webinar. Have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.